If the moon had a lawyer, an IP lawyer, our next speaker would be out of business. That's right. Please welcome to talk about the secret sauce for taking moonshots and developing team efforts for solving big problems, and as a result, developing all kinds of ancillary technology as a result. Astro Teller, captain of Moonshots at X and a 2017 Edison Achievement Award honoree. Take it away.
Thanks, John. Do you need these papers?
I do not. Those are not mine.
It's just stifling here. Can you put up the slides, please? All right. I want to start with a game. So we're going to do an A/B test. You have two choices. Choice A, choice B. Choice A, you get to give $1 million of value, of bottom line value to your company this year, guaranteed, 100%. That's choice A. Choice B, you get to give $1 billion of bottom line value to your company this year, but it's not guaranteed. It's one chance in 100. $1 million, guaranteed. $1 billion, one chance in 100. Who's going to choose choice A? Okay. Who's going to choose choice B? Yeah. Congratulations, you guys passed the math test. And here's the tricky bit. How many of you truly believe that your manager, your CEO, your board of directors even just supports you taking choice B? Not so much. I see some no's in the audience. How many think they actively want you to have a 99% chance of failing? And when you go out there and you take that shot and you don't make it 99 times in 100, they're going to say, that was awesome. So I've just short-circuited an entire hour lecture on innovation down to 1 minute. So I get these groups of people, tell us how to innovate, Astro. That's it, that's the answer. You don't need a lecture on innovation, you need a new manager. You need a new CEO. Unfortunately, I'm pretty serious. So the trick is, it's easy to say fail fast, but you know in your hearts that the place where you work doesn't actually want you to take a 1 in 100 chance. It doesn't. I know it doesn't, because almost nowhere does. It's just tough. And it's not actually tough because it's bad math. You all passed the math test. It's tough because there are all these reasons not to do it. And Edison actually understood this. This quote from Edison is one of my favorites. Now, he had a way of trying to say it's okay to fail. He was doing this judo move where he said, I haven't failed, I just haven't succeeded yet. You know, the next time will be the good one. Now, I happen to use different words, but the experience is the same. I, as the head of X, the captain of Moonshots, feel that my real job is being a culture engineer. So I'm going to try to tell you some of the secrets of how we do what we do. I want you to steal them and take them back with you, because there is a meme in the world that you need a near infinite money hose supply in order to take moonshots. And that is not the case. And if you're waiting for that money hose, the worst thing in the world that could happen to you is you'll get the money hose and you still won't be successful. And that would be extra sad, because now what do you do? Because it's not about the money. It's about solving for that problem. It's about engineering your culture to get your people to do the things, as was just said on stage, they all know how to do still when they're in high school. And it gets beaten out of them between when they're 16 and when they're 26. How are you going to find that in them again? That's the hard part. That's what I spend all of my time doing. And I'd like to give you some examples about that kind of failure and how to make it palatable. So let's start first things first. What is a moonshot? I'll give you a story about where the term came from, and then give you something a little bit more concrete. So I started X along with a man named Sebastian Thrun. We've been going for a couple months. I wrote a strategic planning document, which nobody seemed to care about. I wrote a mission statement, didn't get any comments on that. I ended up sitting with Larry Page, and I said, what is it specifically we're doing? You know. No, I actually don't know. Are we a research center? No. Okay, good, I agree. Are we a new division? Like we're a business unit? Not really. Okay. Are we just trying to be weird? No. Are we trying to take moonshots? And he said, that's what we're doing. Okay? So ever since that moment, I've referred to what we're doing as a moonshot factory. The word moonshot is meant to remind us that what we're trying to do is not for the faint of heart, it's not going to happen quickly, and it has a good chance of not being successful. I use the word factory to remind us that we're trying to systematize the process, that we're not just trying to be gamblers in the innovation space, we're trying to be card counters. We're trying to be organized and systematic about how we do these hard to accomplish things. And I use the word factory to refer back over 100 years ago to what Thomas Edison did, which was the first real attempt to industrialize innovation. Now, he called it an innovation lab. We refer to ours as a moonshot factory, but I think that we are very much standing on the shoulders of the intellectual and emotional work that he created when he did that. So, what is a moonshot? The word moonshot gets used a lot now, and if I can sort of retrofit when people say moonshot, what do they really mean? I think they just mean it's going to be big, it's going to be awesome, you're going to love it, I'm going to feel proud after I do it. I guess that's better than nothing, but that's not very specific anymore. It's gotten a bit watered down. I'm not trying to take the word back from you. I want everyone to be taking moonshots. But let me tell you specifically what we mean when we say moonshot. What we mean is that it has these three aspects, that it's at the intersection of these three constraints. You want to take a moonshot? Awesome. Tell me what the huge problem in the world is that you want to address, that you want to make go away. Because if you can't name that, it's not a moonshot yet. You have a frictionless surface? That's awesome. What's the problem? A frictionless surface is a technology, that's not a problem. Even if you have a problem, what is the radical proposed solution for fixing that problem? The science fiction sounding product or service that if we could make it, no matter how unlikely, it would cause the problem to go away. And the requirement that it be radical is not a desire to look like cowboys. It's a reminder to us that we should be spending our time in the green fields of innovation. The opposite of that is incremental thinking. We're going to solve this big problem in the world by having more money than everyone else, by staying up later than everyone else, by being smarter than everyone else. Those are not high probability ways to win. But to say, we're going to go look in a part of the solution space that no one has been weird enough or brave enough or creative enough to look in, that's possible. And that's part of why it's not about the money. Because not only do you not need huge amounts of money to go there, only the people with huge amounts of money can afford to make progress incrementally. If you don't have huge amounts of money, you have to do this. This is the efficient thing to do, not the expensive thing to do. And then the third requirement, because you could say, like, I'm sure we could come up with lots of huge problems that a time machine would solve, and that's probably still a radical solution despite the number of science fiction movies that it's been in. And then I say, okay, how are we going to get started? Show me some glimmer of evidence that the actual technical work to get there could actually be accomplished. Oh yeah, we don't really have a plan on that one. It's not a moonshot. In order for it to be a moonshot, there has to be a particularly hard core of technical and scientific work that no matter how unlikely it looks, there's at least a first step we can take, a first experiment we can run. So, I'll give you a few examples just to make sure that you were calibrated about some of the stuff that we've done and did, and then I want to give you some of these examples about how we try to create the environment where these things happen. Many of you may know Google Brain. This is the sort of industrialification of deep learning that originally happened at X. It was graduated back to Google a number of years ago. Some of you may know Verily. This is the collection of life sciences projects that we had at X that were bundled up together and set up outside of X as an independent Alphabet entity a few years ago. Waymo is our most recent graduate. This is the self-driving car project. And you know, this is probably the one that you know best, so I'll pause there. Let's make sure it's a moonshot. Huge problem with the world. More than $1 trillion of human capital wasted just sitting in traffic. That sounds worth fixing. More than 1.2 million people a year die in car accidents. That sounds worth fixing. There's actually several other huge problems in the world, but that's probably enough. We can check the huge problem box. It might not look that radical anymore, but 7.5 years ago when we started, it was considered somewhat nutty that we were going to get cars to drive themselves all the way from point A to point B at the push of a button. And then we had a set of technical reasons why we thought this might be possible, which started with the success of the DARPA Grand Challenge about a decade ago. Our airborne wind turbines, our stratospheric balloon project, Wing, which is our self-flying vehicles for package delivery, and other things. Those are some of the projects that are public that we're still doing at X. I'm happy in Q&A to talk more about these, but I'd rather tell you about the culture engineering. So, we have this story. This is how we want you to behave. Every company, every organization has a story about how they want the people at the organization to behave. Our story is not that different from your story. Everybody says fail fast. We didn't invent that story. But people go over here. You know what I'm talking about, right? You tell them to do that, and weirdly, they just persistently keep doing this other set of things that aren't exactly, if it's a good company, then it's like this. If it's a bad company, it's like that. But there's quite a bit of daylight between what they actually do and what you're asking them to be like. Because this is the aspiration. It's the nice way to say lip service. This is the emotional paths of least resistance. And humans follow the emotional paths of least resistance. They do not care what your lip service is. So culture engineering is trying to make the emotional paths of least resistance more or less the same as your lip service so that people actually do the things that you're telling them that you'd like them to do. So the first one is 10x, not 10%. Be audacious. Again, I get a lot of people saying, well, if I had tons of money, maybe I could do that. It's more complicated than that. Number one, when I say, hey, you want to come with me? We're going to make this thing 10% better. I don't know, Astro, I got a couple other offers. If I say, we're going to totally change this, we're going to make this problem 10% better, or sorry, 10 times better. Now I've lit a fire in your heart. You'll stay with me longer. All things being equal, I can pay you less or keep you for the same amount of money. You'll be more passionate about the things that you do. We're on a mission. And there's a ton of value and passion and innovation that is unlocked by being on a mission. Number two, if I say, hey, let's make this thing 10% better. You're like, okay, I guess. Well, if we're going to make it 10% better, let's look at what everyone else did and just kind of try to tweak the variables. You know, if you could just tweak the variables and make it 10% better, someone would already have done that. And there are a lot of companies around the world who are busy tweaking those variables right now. That's the expensive thing to do. You think it's the cheap thing to do because 10% is smaller than 10 times. But it's not. It's actually the expensive thing to do because you're competing with all those people. But if I say that you have to make a car run on a gallon of gasoline for 500 miles instead of for 50, you're like, well, obviously it can't be built the way cars are currently built. We're going to have to do something totally different. Now, maybe you can't figure out a way, but it frees you immediately from all of the assumptions that went into how things are currently being done. And being freed of those assumptions is what's powerful, because that is creativity, is finding some assumptions, what people consider right and normal and correct, to break. And 10x thinking is what gives people the permission, the cultural space to try doing that. The next one is fall in love with the problem, not with the technology. So this is a problem that is near and dear to my heart. We actually built at X a box. It was a bit of a mess in this picture. It got a little bit better. To take seawater, literally ocean water right there, to take seawater and turn it right into methanol. And we were like crying with happiness when those first little drops of methanol that you could stick right, do it carbon negative, so that even when you burn it in an internal combustion engine, the whole cycle is carbon neutral. This is save the planet kind of stuff. And we were literally crying with happiness when the first bits of methanol started coming out of this machine. But we were looking at all of the aspects of it, because what made us happy about it wasn't the machine itself. It was the idea that we might be able to really, in a significant way, help the planet. And so we were looking at the chemistry, at the technology, but also at the ecosystem, where the subsidies, what can get paid to sequester a ton of carbon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the machine worked, but it was looking too expensive. And one of the things that they did in an attempt to save the solution was they killed what was their favorite part of the machine. The first thing that the machine did was pull CO2 out of the seawater. And then it splits the hydrogen and the oxygen, jams the hydrogen with the CO2, and makes the methanol. They said, oh, we just can't get it cheap enough. What if we don't pull the CO2 out of the seawater? What if we just buy captured CO2? It's not as cool anymore, but they cared more about the solution than they did about their technology. Now, it turned out in this case, it didn't work anyway. The cheapest we could even see a path to getting it to was $15 a gallon of gas equivalent. That's just not going to save the world. No one's going to spend $15 on a gallon of gas equivalent. So we killed the project, and that brings me to the next one. You have to celebrate failure. Saying fail fast has no impact on people. Actually, it just smells of hypocrisy. But they killed this project. And you know why they killed this project? When they killed this project, she and her whole team were up on our stage at All Hands. They got bonuses. They were told they could take long vacations. She got a promotion right after she killed this project, a few months after she killed this project. When people see that stuff happen, they say, wait a second, that's kind of weird. It sounds like they might actually mean that fail fast stuff. And that you have to do it about 20 times. But the 20th time, they start actually listening. Maybe by the 40th time, it becomes a social norm, and they do it without even thinking. Now when teams get up on stage, I don't have to give a lecture to X about how the team on stage just did more for innovation at X than everyone sitting in the audience combined. And they get a standing ovation without me having to ask. And they'd be like, where's my bonus if I didn't give them one? And you have to find lots of ways to say thank you. We had an article written in Fast Companies, it turns out, about why we killed this project, celebrating positively her and her team and the great work that they did. So now she feels like it didn't just go nowhere. I don't have to be embarrassed about it. There's a paper which I think is headed towards Nature right now with the scientific details of why this didn't work, so that someone else could actually stand on top of the work we did if we missed something. And that makes them feel really good about it. Now they feel like, I'm just going to try it again. She actually did try again, by the way. And the next one didn't work out either, but she's spinning it out into a standalone business, and she's going to be the CEO. You should be so lucky to have your next 2 failures at wherever you work turn into a promotion and then another promotion afterwards. But because people see that happening at X, they all feel like, hey, I could just be intellectually honest. If the thing I'm working on is good, I'll just say it's working. And if it's not working, I could actually say it's not working and get credit from my peers and from my manager and from the organization for being honest about it. That is powerful. Oh, I just want to say, you know the Day of the Dead, Dia de los Muertos? Instead of having a Halloween celebration, we now have a Day of the Dead celebration, where we remember people who are gone, but we also have like a shrine to the projects that are gone, because it's emotionally painful to leave these things behind. And people love that stuff. But that's what it takes to get these things to come together. Having contact with the real world as fast as possible is another one. You don't really want to know that your thing isn't working in most organizations, because you're going to get yelled at. If you're lucky, you work at an organization where it'll just be kind of quietly, in a like mild embarrassment kind of way, like pushed to the side, like just no one say anything about that. But if you're hungry to win, if you're really serious about winning, you have to throw yourself into the worst situations, the situations that will uncover the problems that you have as fast as possible. Loon, our stratospheric balloon project, is now in a state where our balloons don't have to go around the world anymore, even though the winds sort of circle the world like this. Because we've gotten so good at steering that in a very small area, almost over a single country, we can just do circles, just by rising and falling, predicting where the winds will be, so we don't have to fight the winds, we're sailing with them. There is no way that we could have done that without starting by getting out in the world and failing. By getting out in the world where we knew perfectly well that we were going to have to go all the way around the world. And we didn't even think it was going to get this good. But those experiences in the real world taught us what's hard about balloon science and what the opportunities are with balloon science. Another one of my favorite examples is the self-driving car. There was this moment that I just thought, oh, that's like the poster child for why you have to get out in the real world. Our car was coming around this corner in a suburban area, quiet street, and it slowed to a stop by itself. And there was a woman in a wheelchair in the middle of the street with a broom trying to shoo a duck out of the middle of the street. And the duck was kind of waddling around, and she was trying to like spank it out of the road. And eventually she got it out of the road, and then she got off the street, and the car kept going. And I thought, wow, that is never going to be a unit test in like self-driving car land. If you were like starting on a whiteboard and just going to write down, well, it's got to deal with like the woman and the duck problem. But that's the real world, is all of those things. That's why we get out in the world fast. Weirdly, our cars are now driving so well that we have to actually manufacture a hard time for them, because we have to wait for days, sometimes weeks, for anything remotely weird to happen. So we have people like hiding in a bag in the middle of the road and they like jump out and like, scream boo at the car just to see if we can freak the car out. And one of the big things was a couple of years ago, we had our cars working so well. This was 4 years ago now. Having our cars working so well, we gave them to Googlers who didn't work at X and said, take them home, use them for your commute. But we have cameras on the inside of the car, we're watching you. You gotta keep your hands right by the wheel. You understand it? Oh yeah, totally, Astro, I'm like. Thankfully, the cars were perfect, because the humans were not. And I'm being diplomatic when I say the humans were not perfect. They didn't keep their hands anywhere close to the wheel. And so we saw this, and pretty quickly we ended the experiment. We said, I guess humans are a totally unacceptable backup for cars. And we started down a path, which people thought was a little nutty at the time, but I'm feeling better and better about, where we built a car that didn't have a steering wheel in it, to teach our engineers that the car is going all the way from point A to point B at the push of a button with no intervention from the human. No possibility of intervention from the human, because that forces us to think that it's got to be safe the whole way, instead of thinking that some backup that isn't actually going to be a safe backup is going to save the day when things get weird. That's why we have experiences in the real world, because you can't predict this stuff. And the last one I want to leave you with is you have to pair that audacity with equal amounts of humility. There's no point throwing yourself into the real world, encouraging everyone to think of these things not as failures but as experiments, getting all this data back and then not learning. And you know why you don't learn? Because you don't want to be wrong. If you can wire yourselves as an organization to believe at the beginning that you're wrong, We have no idea how to make a self-driving car. We don't know how to make stratospheric balloon internet because nobody knows how to make stratospheric balloon internet. Let's go find out. When you're humble, it exposes you in a way that you can listen to the data you just went to all that effort to gather. And now you can learn. Now you can be better. So there are training wheels at X that we can put on that humility learning process. One of them, before, this is an early version of Wing, we had this was 2 months before we went to Australia to do these early tests. It was a little over 2 years ago. I had them all sit in a room, and I said, you have just failed. You have just been wrong. We have just discovered it's 4 months from now. And we're horribly embarrassed about how badly this launch went. Don't you feel bad about how badly our launch went? Because I'm telling you, it went terribly. Like, we can't even look each other in the eyes. Let's spend the next 2 minutes and write down why it went that badly. It hadn't gone that badly, and it didn't go that badly, and it probably didn't go that badly because people 2 months before the launch wrote down all of the things they could imagine going wrong. But you have to help them to do that. Another one that I do is I say, show me your list of the next 10 things you're going to do on the project. And they show me the list. And I say, how did you get that list? And they're like, well, this one's the most important, Astro, and then this one's the next most important, and then this one's the next most important. Well, humor me. Just reorder the list. Not by what you think is important, but by what you think will teach us the most, no matter how useless you think the thing on the list is. Okay. So they remake the list, and it's a very different order. And I'm encouraging you guys to go run this experiment. So they remake the list, and then you say, just do the top 2 things on the list. I don't even care what the outcome is, just do the top 2 things on the list. And they do. And they come back, and they're like, okay, that was surprising. And I say, now make a top 10 list, a top 20 list of what you think we should do. And they do. And it's unrecognizably different than the first list. And I say, that's why we don't work on things in importance order. We work on them in learning order. That's a way of putting training wheels on this process of being humble and open-minded and eager to learn. So these are these 5 things that I just told you about. I'm looking forward to having a little bit of Q&A with you now, but I want to leave you feeling these are not some things that we're hoarding to ourselves. Moonshots doesn't have to be something that just happens at X. And it doesn't take tons of money to try to be audacious, to try to be humble, to encourage your people to run experiment after experiment and to drive their progress through that series of experiments. It doesn't cost money to thank people when they were brave and it didn't work out. In fact, it's the cheapest and most efficient thing to do if you actually want to win. All right, thank you very much.